Welcome to AM Best Audio.
The Political Risk Podcast is an independent podcast focused on geopolitical risk for decision makers in specialty insurance markets, reinsurance, and beyond. It's hosted by David Benyon, who's a freelance journalist with more than 15 years' experience writing about risk in P&C insurance and reinsurance markets. He joins us now. David, so glad you could speak with us today.
Pleasure. Great to speak with you, John.
So, David, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I think you already did, to be fair. I mean, I've been a freelance journalist for a while now, I think about 8 years. And before that, I was a magazine editor in the insurance and reinsurance trade press. And I've always had a strong interest in international relations and geopolitics. So in this wonderful or benighted new era we find ourselves in, those strands have somewhat come together through this podcast.
So you started this podcast, David. What was the impetus for putting it together?
Well, actually, it's during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So my sort of sidebar of the career is I'm a reservist in the UK Armed Forces. So I was actually in uniform when the invasion happened in February 2022. So I was coming back to my usual world of freelance journalism after that, but I had a period of leave and a little bit more time than usual. So I was trying to rack my brains and think, how has the world changed? And how could I bring together the strands of where I have perhaps contacts and experience, but also a particular interest beyond my previous journalism. So it's really an attempt to bring together geopolitical risk and insurance markets, especially insurance markets, with some lines of business in particular. So as the name suggests, political risk insurance. And obviously that's often bound up with credit and political risk insurance. And you've also got an enormous growth within war risk, political violence, terrorism covers as well. And some other lines of business too, but they're probably the main ones.
So as a reservist, I guess you've seen some of this geopolitical risk firsthand.
I suppose paradoxically, it was a little bit quiet in the Middle East while I was out there because everything was highly focused on Ukraine. But obviously, since then, we had the Houthis in the Red Sea still posing a risk. But in 2023, around about the time I started it, and of course, there's recurring tensions with Iran and of course Israel and Palestine as well. So, yeah, plenty going on.
So, David, tell us a little bit about the podcast itself. How long have you been doing it? How many episodes have you recorded? What sort of subject matter do you tackle, so on and so forth?
Yep. So since July 2023, just recorded the 61st episode. So tend to record. It started off with one episode per month just because I had other commitments, but it now runs 2, sometimes 3 episodes, depending on sponsored special episodes as well. So the idea really is to try and mix together expertise, thought leadership from within specialty insurance with increasingly overlapping worlds of geopolitical risk. So, and that probably shows through in the mix of guests that I try to have on. So, you may have a CEO or a senior underwriter or broker from political risk or political violence. And sometimes I mix those guests with former diplomats or analysts or authors or academics, former military people. That kind of, it has been quite a different world, I think, of geopolitics. But increasingly, they are intertwined. I mean, I hosted an event or co-hosted an event at Lloyd's just a few weeks ago that really, I think, underlined that, because you had an audience where there were CEOs and those kind of the great and the good from within that specialty insurance world in the London market. But from conversations and increasingly aware of the other sort of worlds that I mix in these days, there were quite a few senior intelligence people, retired intelligence people in the room as well. A lot of ambassadors, former or current or former senior diplomats from around the world as well. And it just really goes to show how the risk landscape is changing.
It sounds like you're getting a really interesting mix of guests on your podcast.
Definitely. I think just to cherry pick a few recent guests. An episode I've recorded recently yet to put out will be BPL's executive chairman. But on the non-insurance side of things, I had a former test pilot, retired US Air Force general, test pilot for the F-22, and US ambassador to NATO and UK ambassador to NATO as well. So, and a former Chinese People's Liberation Army colonel as well. So you really like crazy mix of guests. But yeah, a lot of really impressive people from the insurance market too. Chairman of Lockton Re specialty business recently. Really senior heads of political risk or senior underwriters for political violence. So it's a nice mix.
David, who are you finding your listeners to be?
I mean, it's it's kind of a mix of those worlds. There are certainly some people from the world of geopolitical risk advisory and intelligence organizations and that kind of thing. But primarily it is the insurance market. It's largely those lines of business. It's the political risk underwriters, credit and political risk underwriters and brokers, and the same on the war risk, political violence side. I'm certainly trying to build out among the insurance buyers. So I'd love to get more chief risk officers and risk managers and insurance buyers listening too. Some of them already do, but of course it's a harder audience to reach because you don't have a sort of concentration as you do as you would in the insurance market. So that's a bit of a work in progress. There's all those kind of diplomatic and that kind of world of expertise as well. So it's a mixed bag, really. It kind of brings all those people together. So we tend to get about just under 1,000 streams each month. And it's difficult to drill down with podcasts. You don't get all the data you want in terms of listeners. So what I rely on is word of mouth, and LinkedIn is obviously a great a great marketing tool. So you can see who's responding, who's following on there, that kind of thing. So that gives you a good indicator.
Customize your data experience. BestLink now offers an interactive company dashboard that provides company-level intelligence in a fast, user-friendly interface featuring interactive tables, charts, and Sparkline performance histories. Customize the dashboard tiles to prioritize the insurer ratings, data, and analytics that best support your workflow. AM Best. Our insight, your advantage.
Do you get feedback from your listeners? Do they reach out to you?
All the time. And what I also really like is I think sometimes it's probably almost impossible not to fall into this trap. But trade journalism, which is my own background, you tend to interview the CEOs, you tend to interview the really senior people at the top of organizations. But really you want to reach people who are entrant level as well. So some of the more interesting, I love it when people obviously drop me a message or email me and say they want to take part in this. That's how some great relationships begin and prosper. But certainly there are people who are maybe students who are interested in getting into insurance as a profession. I've had Army intelligence officers who are likewise thinking about getting out of the military and getting into insurance, getting into the city. And it's kind of like a how-to, a bit of a insurance 101 guide. If you're thinking about getting into those geopolitically exposed lines of business, obviously they're growth areas because of the state of the world at the moment. So that really I find interesting. And even one or two people who said they then subsequently got jobs in the market after having blitzed their way through a bunch of episodes.
So, David, I got to ask, what are some of the big questions that you're hoping to answer for your listeners?
Sure. Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. And political risks are obviously harder to model than the likes of natural catastrophe for this industry and for everybody who's a forecaster out there. But I think there is a lot of demand for thought leadership out there at the moment. There's been a dearth of it because it's not been a primary focus for the insurance market. But I think it's to I read a quote the other day from Richard Miller at Howden Re, who referenced that political violence is no longer peripheral, and these risks really are at the core of the markets these days and capital. So I guess the questions are which risks are on the radar among potential buyers, and trying to just reflect and link that towards the products that exist in the market that can really help mitigate, transfer those risks rather. So I think the spread of that is really underlines the state of the geopolitical risk environment, because you've got everything from trade policy, trade wars and tariffs, which, as we've seen, are quite unpredictable and seemingly policy being done on the hoof. You don't quite know what's going to happen next week, never mind next month or next year. And then at the other end, you've got tensions in the Pacific over China and Taiwan. That's clearly a major focus of US foreign policy. Middle East is never going to quieten down as a hotspot geopolitically. But in Europe, clearly, we have more on the political violence side, war risk. You've got a lot of concerns about sabotage, strikes rights, civil commotion, which is part of political violence. And you're getting more comprehensively bought political violence protection, because it does include terrorism, but also war risk and that kind of civil unrest stuff, which is the SRCC risks, because a lot of these risks overlap. I mean, you've got potentially state-backed hybrid warfare. So we might as well just say it's mostly the focus on Russia. So that's going to be, it could be cyber attacks. So again, cyber is not maybe the main line of business I think about, but we do occasionally talk about that stuff. You've got, subsea cables that are being attacked. You have railways or commercial property and assets being damaged or set fire to, and that kind of thing. And then more harder to trace the attribution, but some of the rise in political extremism or in social unrest, there is certainly some funding of organized crime groups and political groups that is fomenting that too. So in Europe, it's really a hybrid warfare piece. It's about grey zone is the fashionable word for it, but a lot of different strands coming together. Like I say, everything from the kind of hard war risk stuff, terrorism itself is changing as well, and then you've got all the more political risk side of things. So as I say, tariffs and protectionism feed into that. You have potential expropriation of assets. A lot of sectors that the insurance industry protects, such as extractive industries, mining in sub-Saharan Africa. You've got rare earths that are increasingly a focus of government strategically, but it's commercial organizations that will mine those in sub-Saharan African countries in particular. Or you've got the race towards net zero in the West, and but a lot of the whether it's solar farms or whatever the infrastructure may be, is at risk of damage, and a lot of that is geopolitically linked. So you could have in a lot of the countries where those assets are going to need to be are risky places. They are geopolitically volatile parts of the world. So all of that stuff is driving, I would say, all those insurance products. So political risk when it comes to protecting investment, and political violence when it comes to protecting property.
Do you have any future plans for your podcast, David?
I keep thinking about maybe going into video, but until a sponsor demands that I do it, kicking and screaming, maybe dragging me towards doing it, I think I'll stick with audio for now, because I think it's been a learning experience already doing an audio podcast, never mind getting all the cameras and everything as you guys have. So we'll see about that. I think I want to do some more events. As I said, I recently was on stage at Lloyd's with SCORE and with Marsh Specialties. So I'd like to do more live stuff. And yeah, we'll see what this current year brings. It's probably going to go in a flash. They always do, but onwards and upwards.
All right. Well, best of luck. David, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
That was David Benyon, host of the Political Risk Podcast. And I'm John Weber for Best Review Magazine. Looking to get the full attention of the insurance industry? We have the platforms that will do just that. Whether it be AM Best TV, AM Best Audio, Best Review Magazine, or Best Day. Find out more by calling AM Best Advertising Sales at 908-439-2200, extension 5399, and have a great day.